All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Now, the Mughal Empire spanned 3 incredible centuries, right? And it was run by emperors who literally shaped the destiny of an entire subcontinent. Usually, when we hear the word Mughal, most of us instantly picture this golden age, magnificent art, sprawling palaces, stunning architecture, and beautiful poetry. But I've got to ask you something directly. You know the Taj Mahal, of course, but do you have any idea what actually happened behind those pristine marble walls? Well, we are taking a sharp pivot away from that romanticized fairy tale today, because, as you'll see, lurking right beneath the surface of this glittering empire was a dark, intensely paranoid, and deeply self-destructive reality. The real history here, it's a story of brothers murdering brothers. Seriously, it's straight out of a true crime thriller. We're talking about emperors imprisoned by their own kids, poison slipped into wine glasses, daggers in the dark, the whole shebang. The Mughals absolutely built one of the greatest empires in human history, but they also nearly destroyed it themselves from the inside out. So today, we're going deep into the secrets they definitely don't teach you in school. Okay, Section 1, Kill or be killed, the law of succession. You see, the empire had a massive, glaring structural flaw. There were absolutely no formal rules for who inherited the throne. Because of that, every single royal transition turned into a deadly, paranoia-fueled war. Kill or be killed wasn't just some dramatic metaphor, it was standard operating policy. Just look at Aurangzeb's ruthless rise to power. To get the throne, he fought this brutal, no-holds-barred war against his own 3 brothers. One was executed, another was hunted all the way across Persia and killed, and the eldest, Shikoh, who ironically was actually the people's favorite, was paraded through the streets of Delhi in chains on a filthy elephant before they beheaded him. History remembers Aurangzeb as an emperor, but you can probably guess what his brothers called him. Moving on to Section 2, Poison, the weapon of the Mughal court. Now, this daily paranoia wasn't just for succession. It literally infiltrated every single meal. In the Mughal court, poison was basically a silent political language. Just think about the court food tasters. These were guys whose one and only job was to eat and drink everything presented to the emperor and then, well, just wait around to see if they drop dead. The fear of poisoning was so incredibly pervasive that even Emperor Akbar, who was arguably the greatest and most universally respected of all the Mughal rulers, was reportedly targeted multiple times. And honestly, if Akbar wasn't safe, absolutely no one was safe. Then there's the incredibly tragic case of Emperor Humayun. This was essentially a slow poison of the mind. Humayun spent years wandering in exile over in Persia, and when he finally did reclaim power, he was totally broken, heavily dependent on opium. Historians actually think this addiction was introduced to him gradually, engineered not to kill his body right away, but to completely destroy his mind. And he eventually died after falling down his library stairs in a stupor. Whether that addiction was a tragic accident or a calculated assassination, the result was the same, a diminished emperor and a highly vulnerable throne. All right, Section 3, the harem, power hidden in plain sight. It is time to rethink pretty much everything you assume about the Mughal Zanana. There is this huge public myth that the Zanana was just this purely decorative place, right? Just filled with passive, submissive women. But the historical reality? Oh, it was a highly dangerous, incredibly influential political powerhouse. The women hidden behind the curtain were very often the ones actually pulling the strings of the entire empire. And you can see this power perfectly captured in the reign of Nur Jahan. She was the wife of Emperor Jahangir. Now, Jahangir had his brilliant moments, sure, but he was catastrophically weak in other areas. He was an alcoholic and a heavy opium addict. So Nur Jahan, who was lethal and a true political genius, just stepped right into that power vacuum. I mean, she was issuing imperial edicts, she appeared on Mughal coins, which was practically unheard of for a woman back then, she commanded armies, and even negotiated with foreign powers. Behind a weak emperor, she was the real boss. Which brings us to Section 4, the tragedy of the Taj Mahal. We're looking at the most famous Mughal story of them all here, but we're focusing on the immense human cost behind the romance. 20,000. That is the number I want you to remember. We all know the story, right? Shah Jahan builds the Taj Mahal as this grand, monumental love for his wife, Mumtaz Mahal, after she died giving birth to their 14th child. But it was built in brutal, grueling conditions on the broken backs of 20,000 laborers. And it took 22 long years. Over 2 decades of immense exploitation, very often without adequate compensation for the workers, and costing what would be the equivalent of billions of dollars today. The sheer scale of the sacrifice required to build this thing is just staggering. But here is the cruelest twist of irony in all of Mughal history. The ultimate builder, imprisoned by his own son. In 1658, Shah Jahan was completely overthrown and put under strict house arrest in Agra fort. And who put him there? His ambitious son, Aurangzeb. Yep, the exact same ruthless prince we were talking about at the start of this explainer. Just imagine this haunting visual for a second. Shah Jahan spent the final 8 years of his life just looking out a prison window at his own masterpiece. If he stood at the right spot, at the bars of his window in Agra fort, he could see the Taj Mahal sitting across the river. This breathtaking tomb that he spent an absolute fortune building for his wife literally became his daily prison view right up until the day he died. And that leads us nicely into secret number 5, Aurangzeb, the emperor who broke the empire. This is a wild story of a brilliant but totally disastrous ruler who ultimately doomed the whole dynasty. Aurangzeb reigned for 49 years, the longest of any Mughal emperor. He was incredibly disciplined, personally incorruptible, and yet he destroyed absolutely everything his ancestors had built. Let's look at the foundation versus the destruction here. Previous emperors, specifically Akbar, had built this empire on radical religious tolerance. Akbar welcomed everyone, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Jains. He even abolished the jizya tax on non-Muslims to help forge a unified Indian identity. But Aurangzeb, he systematically dismantled the whole thing. He imposed strict Islamic law across an overwhelmingly Hindu empire, demolished Hindu temples, and brought back that jizya tax, which completely alienated the loyal Rajput kingdoms that had been the Mughals' strongest allies for generations. You can literally trace this rapid collapse on a timeline. In 1658, Aurangzeb violently takes the throne and instantly alienates his loyal Rajput allies. Fast forward to the late 1600s, and his self-righteous fundamentalism has sparked massive revolts all over the subcontinent, with the Maratha Wars bleeding the imperial treasury absolutely dry. Finally, in 1707, Aurangzeb dies at the age of 88 in a military camp, while his empire is actively fracturing and essentially on fire all around him. His final realization is captured in this incredibly haunting quote from his last letter. He wrote, "I have sinned terribly, and I do not know what punishment awaits me." Man, what a tragic confession. Here's a guy who, at the very end of his long life, finally saw the catastrophic mistakes of his 49-year reign. And wouldn't you know it, shortly after his death, this mighty Mughal empire collapsed within a single generation. So, what's the big takeaway for this entire explainer? The empire that built it destroyed itself. The Mughals weren't brought down by some massive foreign invasion. They were brought down by the choices made inside their own walls. Brothers who couldn't share power, emperors who preferred the silence of poison over diplomacy, and a relentless hunger for absolute control that just corroded the dynasty right from the inside. The Taj Mahal still stands beautifully today, for sure. But what does its hidden history tell us about the deeply corrosive, self-destructive nature of absolute power? Keep digging, because there is always more real history hidden behind the monuments.